16. Hell to pay. Share Air Incorporated, may I help you? The chirpy voice greeted me the next morning when I called. Yes, hello, I'm with Senator Brayman's office, and he requested I call about a flight manifest list for his trip back from Manchester tomorrow, I said very professionally. All right, ma'am, hold one moment. My heart beat recklessly as I waited for their next move. Ma'am, the computer says that was faxed over yesterday. Do you need me to refax? No, that wouldn't help me. I couldn't give them an Ohio number to fax it to without a really good explanation that I didn't have available to me at the moment. Plus, I couldn't be sure my parents even owned a fax. Goodness, someone must have misplaced it. You know what? Don't worry about it. It's the regular crew, right? Yes, ma'am, it is, the voice answered. Share Air didn't sound suspicious at all. Perfect. Great. With Darlene Smith attending? I asked, and held my breath. There was a pause. Darlene Templeton is the flight attendant, ma'am. Oh, right, I always do that. I went to high school with a Darlene Smith. Templeton, of course, I said a little too maniacally. Well, great, thanks a lot. My pleasure, ma'am. And to whom am I speaking? I hung up quickly. Luckily, I'd star 67 the call in the event that they had caller ID, but hopefully that last bit of suspicion would be easily shrugged off by my Share Air friend. Darlene Templeton. I longed for Google. But until I could be reunited with fast internet connections in a few days, I'd have to rely on good old-fashioned sleuthing. Where would I live if I was Darlene Templeton? I gave a little shudder immediately after posing this query to myself. I didn't want to identify with Darlene Templeton in any way. We already had one thing entirely too disturbingly in common. I decided to rephrase the question to, where did that tramp Darlene Templeton most likely live? And set about making a list of options. First up was Trenton, New Jersey, Brayman's hometown and frequent flight destination. Information didn't have a listing for her in Trenton. They did have a listing for 9 other Templetons, and it occurred to me that she could still live with her parents or other relatives, but I decided not to give up on the notion of a solo listing until I tried a few more options. I'd reached Share Air at a Newark, New Jersey number, so I tried Newark information next. Again, a lot of Templetons, but no Darlene. One D. Templeton turned out to be a cranky man named David, who didn't appreciate being bothered when he was bleaching his dentures. I could understand that. My experience with Crest White Strips had taught me that such activities required one's concentration. I said as much in my apology, but he didn't soften. I looked out with the Manhattan directory. There were 16 D. Templetons and 3 actual Darlene Templetons. Surely one of them had to be her. I wrote down the numbers and thanked the directory assistance lady, who was surprisingly pleasant. Maybe I'd call her back some other time. The first Darlene was very chatty, but definitely not the one I was looking for. She explained that she had been Daniel Templeton until her sex change operation the previous week, and that I was the first person to call since she'd revised the listing. She hadn't liked the name Danielle, but had wanted to stay in the D family. After all, I'm a D cup now, she gushed. I could imagine her excitement, but didn't really have time to talk to her, which was too bad because she seemed capable of saying fascinating things. The second Darlene had recently moved to San Francisco and Gilbert, the new tenant, was annoyed to still be receiving calls for her. I dialed the third Darlene's number, wondering if Manhattan was going to turn out to be a complete wash. It went to voicemail after 6 rings. Please don't let it be an automated voicemail recording. I beg the God of investigating adultery once it's discovered. This was no time for a machine to tell me I had reached 212, etc. Once again, I was smiled upon. Hi, you've reached Darlene. I'm not home right now, but I can't wait to call you back. The voice was sparkly and unmistakable. I had my woman. According to Bremen's schedule, the plane was slated to return him and Aaron to D.C. that afternoon. I imagined Darlene would be returning home shortly thereafter, because I was scheduled to fly back to D.C. on the 31st, and we'd never overlapped in the past as far as I could tell. How had Aaron gotten out of spending New Year's Eve with Darlene? Maybe she had other obligations, just as I'd had over Christmas. Oh, he was a dirtbag. Aaron called to check in midday, but I asked my dad to tell him I was taking a nap. My dad gave me a quick look before complying. Of course, he answered gently. We didn't discuss it any further, though I could tell he knew something was wrong. The next morning, I screwed up my courage to call Darlene again. This time, she answered her phone. Hello, she said in her bubbly way. Hi, Darlene, my name is Sammy Joyce. I'm a friend of Aaron's. I began deliberately. I didn't want to start off identifying myself as his girlfriend and giving her too much of a shock. I needed to work with her a little bit. Oh, he's not here right now. He's back in D.C. for work, she answered. Not here right now? I knew he wasn't, but that phrase suggested he often was there. You should try him on his home phone. Do you have that number? He has a cell, but he only uses that for work calls. She was remarkably cheerful and helpful, and not in the least bit suspicious of or threatened by a random girl calling for her boyfriend. She didn't seem very much like me at all. I took a calming breath. I'm not actually calling for Aaron. I'm calling about Aaron. You see, he and I have been dating for 5 months, I said slowly. Excuse me. Darlene sounded slightly less bubbly. I felt bad, but I needed to cut to the chase. Yes, and I've just discovered that you've apparently been dating him for, I'm not even sure how long, and I thought maybe the fact that we're both dating him but don't know about the other one might be something we want to discuss. There's a brief pause. Is this some sort of joke, she asked. No, I'm afraid not, I answered wearily. Aaron and I have been together since June. We're not just dating. We're in a serious relationship. I think you've got to be mistaken, she said evenly, though I could hear the doubt in her voice. June, huh? That wasn't good. She had over 2 months on me. Although at least he'd strayed from her to start up with me. Did that count for something? Possibly in some pathetic way I shouldn't dwell on. Well, he and I have been together since August, and I also considered it a serious exclusive relationship for the past few months. I'm afraid he's deceived both of us. I don't understand, Darlene said. I sympathized. It wasn't a fun thing to understand. I thought about sending her the Post article about the whipped cream incident to prove my claims. I remembered how Aaron had been upset that I had identified him as my boyfriend. Darlene must not read the post. How often do you guys see each other? She asked softly. Maybe she was beginning to let herself comprehend. Well, we live in the same city, so... You live in D.C.? She interrupted. Yeah, so unless he's traveling with Senator Brayman, he's pretty much with me, I answered. There was a long pause. Basically, the only time he's not with me is when he's in D.C., Darlene finally responded. We figured out that it had broken down to about 50-50 over the most recent busiest months. Darlene said that she constantly traveled for her job, and she knew how hard Aaron worked, so the jagged pattern of their actual physical time together had just seemed like a sacrifice worth making. We're apart a lot, but when we're together, it's so intense, she was saying. Her words javelined into me. Time with Aaron was intense. That was one of its draws. Are you in love with him? I asked her. Of course, she answered. I heard her stifle a little sob. Are you? She asked, almost too softly to hear. Did I feel like going into the whole love versus addiction explanation with her? Not really. Not at the moment, I answered truthfully. How could he do this? She asked in an anguished tone. I don't know. He's a lying rat bastard, I concluded. I had trouble believing it myself, but that was the only conclusion I could draw. The man I had fantasized about spending the rest of my days with, the man to whom I'd developed my life's only full-fledged addiction, was a cheating ass face. Forgive me, Steve Martin, I never should have strayed. I'm going to hang up and call him, Darlene said. No, wait, I urged. What was it that I wanted instead? I wasn't quite sure. I just don't think he should be able to get away with this, I continued. Me neither, that's why I'm going to call him. He's got a lot of explaining to do. Darlene agreed. Right, but if he's been this good at keeping up the charade so far, he's not going to give up easily. He's very smart. I bet he'll try to pit us against one another. I don't know. Tell you I'm demented or something, I said. Are you? Darlene asked in a suspiciously hopeful tone. No, I'm not, I assured her. At least not in a clinical sense. Well, then what should we do? Darlene asked. It was a good question. I had a half-formed plan. I just needed to sell her on it. I think he should have to face us together so that we can hear what he says to both of us, I said simply. What do you mean? She asked. Well, I'm flying back to D.C. tomorrow. Aaron's picking me up at my place, and we're going to a New Year's Eve party. Darlene had started sobbing a little again. I'm sorry, I said. Sucks for me to think about him with you, too. He told me he had to spend New Year's Eve with his friend who's going through a divorce, she said. We're meeting up again next week, so I didn't even think twice about it. That was pretty evil, using an excuse that also made him seem like a caring and considerate friend. Despicable. Do you have plans for New Year's? I asked her. Just going to a bar with some girlfriends, nothing major, she replied. Okay, well then, why don't you come down to D.C. instead? Come to the New Year's Eve party. We'll confront him together. I don't know, Darlene said uncertainly. Would you rather spend the night away knowing he was with me? I asked a bit cruelly. And a bit disingenuously. I doubted any time Aaron and I spent together would be romantic from here on out, but it worked. I'll be there, she said decisively. We exchanged cell phone numbers and agreed that neither one of us would talk to Aaron until we saw him the following night. I hoped I could trust her. "Do you mind my asking what you do in D.C.?" she asked, as we were getting off the phone. "I work for another senator," I said. "I specialize in healthcare issues." There was a little pause during which I reflected on the significance of my words. I did do important work, and I liked my job. That was the identity I needed to get back to. I had to forget about Aaron if I could. "I guess that explains why you're so smart. Aaron must really like that," Darlene said wistfully. Oh gosh, I didn't want her getting herself down any more than she already was. Plus, I didn't really want to dwell on the point she was making out of her own insecurity, which was essentially that Aaron liked me for my brains. So what? He liked her for her body? Her sexual prowess? This was an unhealthy train of thought. "He's a jerk, remember that?" I responded. "He's not the guy we thought he was, so who cares what he likes?" "Yeah, I guess," she said weakly. I needed a conspirator with a little more backbone. "It's just that he said he loved me," she continued plaintively. I was instantly reminded of the Melanie Spearham debacle. She had screamed something similar just before slapping Trey Gannon upside the head. Many times I had shaken my head in disbelief over that crazy scene. And yet, maybe Melanie Spearham had gotten it right. If I had hired bait a long time ago, I could have saved myself a lot of this pain. "Yeah, well, he says he loves me too," I said, with a certain degree of selfish satisfaction. After all, it had been a recent triumph. "I'll kill him," Darlene responded. There was the backbone I'd been looking for. She was murderous. Perfect. I got off the phone, preoccupied with my own thoughts of revenge. I knew in the back of my head that I'd feel other, more despairing emotions once the anger wore off, so I held on to it tightly, like a rage security blanket. "Are you sure nothing's wrong, honey?" my mom asked me in the car on the way to the airport the next day. I'd tried my best to act normally during the last few vacation moments with my parents, but it had been a lost cause. "Oh, I'm okay," I replied. "My boyfriend's been sleeping with someone else since before he even met me, but it's no big deal. I'm just flying back to ambush him tonight with the other woman. Other than that, everything's great." In a rare moment, my mother didn't seem to know what to say. My dad stared straight ahead at the road. "Yeah, her name's Darlene. It's funny because he's called me her name before by accident, and I assumed he was saying darling. Isn't that hilariously tragic?" I just kept talking. Finally, my mom interjected. "I have some Valium if you want it," she said simply. I wasn't sure it would be wise to add Valium to the dangerous emotional cocktail I had going on inside me. I thanked her but turned her down. As I hugged them goodbye at the curbside, my dad let his hand linger on my shoulder. "Don't get too sad about this, Sammy," he said. "You deserve a lot better and you're gonna get it." It was a very sweet sentiment from someone who had been anti-Aaron from the beginning. I'd considered his disapproval irrational, but maybe it had been Father's intuition all along. "Thanks, Dad," I said gratefully. My mom tried to press some pills into my hand. "No, really, I'm okay," I said. "It's just a little aspirin," she said, with an exaggerated wink. She seemed to think that I might just be trying to keep up appearances. I was past that, but instead of arguing with her, I pocketed the offering and kissed her goodbye. I scrolled through the backlogged emails on my signal-restored BlackBerry while I waited at my gate. Thankfully, the weather was clear and all the planes were on time. Aaron and I had planned to reunite at 6 p.m. at my place to exchange presents and go out to dinner before heading over to the party, but I knew I wouldn't be able to act that convincingly for that long of a time. I clicked compose on my BlackBerry. To Aaron Driver, AI driver at bremen.senate.gov. From Samantha Joyce, SR Joyce at gary.senate.gov. Subject homecoming. Text, hey there. Sorry I've missed you the past 2 days. I came down with a post-Christmas virus and basically slept for 48 hours. Healthy now and looking forward to seeing you, but I've had some flight changes and I'm not getting until later. Why don't I just meet you at the party? I can be there by 9. S. I read it over before sending it. It wasn't that warm, certainly not funny, but it got the job done. I didn't feel capable of exhibiting more enthusiasm. Hopefully he wouldn't notice. He did. To Samantha Joyce, SR Joyce at gary.senate.gov. From Aaron Driver, AI driver at bremen.senate.gov. Subject, homecoming. Text, are you okay? You don't sound like yourself. I'm sorry you were sick. I can't wait to see you. I've been thinking about you nonstop. What time are you getting in? I want to see you sooner. Love, A. I decided to borrow one of his tactics and claim that I hadn't received this last message when I saw him later. I felt idiotic for having believed his tales of malfunctioning Blackberries and misplaced cell phone chargers. All of it had been part of his greater deceit. It had foolishly chalked it up to general irresponsibility. But the truth was far more sinister, and it left me cold and disillusioned. Returning to my apartment, I felt the sting of Shackleton's absence more sharply. The stale darkness of my briefly abandoned space struck me as achingly lonely. And after tonight, I feared I would be spending even more time by myself in it. I sensed myself succumbing to numbness. Luckily, Liza was in town and came over immediately. Telling her the tale from the beginning made my wrath hot and fresh once more. By the time she had decided to accompany me to the party, I felt ready for a showdown. Liza was of course shocked by Aaron's behavior, but not that shocked, which was subsequently shocking to me. She tried to explain that there was something just fundamentally untrustworthy about him, that he was charismatic and charming, but didn't give off a solid, honest vibe. Why didn't you tell me this a long time ago? I asked, somewhat accusingly. I tried to, she replied. That was true, and I hadn't listened. I hadn't listened to Zelda either, or heeded RG's initial warning to be wary of any Bremen staffer. Had I simply taken that to heart, I could have avoided this entire mess. I wondered who else had harbored serious doubts about Aaron. As Liza spent the next hour trying to make me look stunning for the ambush, Aaron called 7 times. I was pleased that he was frantically trying to hunt me down, and satisfied that I was thwarting his attempts with my screening tactics. I had never screened him before in the course of our entire relationship. I'd even answered the phone at wildly inappropriate times, just so I wouldn't miss his call. Ignoring him for the first time felt strangely freeing. After a pep talk from Liza, I rang Darlene. She was on the train, still an hour away. I gave her the directions to the party and asked her to call me when she was outside so we could coordinate the attack. She agreed and assured me that she hadn't had any contact with Aaron. I was glad to hear a new hardened edge to her otherwise bubbly voice. After a shaky start, she was proving to be a worthy comrade. I almost felt like changing to camouflage and paint, but Liza insisted that my slinky black party dress was a more stealth way to go. We poured ourselves some drinks, ate some pizza, and prepared to move out. I promise I'm still very interested in your life and want to talk all about it, I said before we left. I felt guilty and self-conscious that we were focusing all of our attention on me. Liza waved this away. Plenty of time for that. This is about you and Operation Liberation, she said firmly. I thought we could come up with a snazzier name than that, but decided not to be critical. I was a bit of a stickler when it came to operation monikers. It constantly amazed me how often the authorities in charge managed to inappropriately name military expeditions. One of my favorites from recent history was Operation Just Cause. Whenever I'd heard it, I'd acted out a little dialogue in my head. Why are we invading this country? One voice would say. Just cause, the other would reply with an implied shrug. Clearly, they could have done a better naming job, as could Liza have done, but at least she captured the militaristic nature of our mission. Ready? She asked me sweetly. Ready, I replied. It didn't take us long to get to the party, even with the increased New Year's Eve traffic. A group of Aaron's friends had rented out a rooftop bar in Adams Morgan, and as our cab rolled up, the street was hopping with energized revelers. After a steep five-flight climb, we exited onto the deck, where we were greeted by a storybook party scene. Happy guests created a steady roar of small talk, ringed by latticed walls that were strung with lights and confetti. A forest of tall heat lamps kept everything warm and glowing. I resisted the urge to scan the crowd and instead made my way over to the bar with Liza right behind me. She'd done a better surveillance job, which didn't surprise me. He's here, he hasn't seen you yet. Don't turn around, she instructed. This, of course, led me to start immediately turning around, but Liza had anticipated that and poked me hard in the back to stop me. It occurred to me that she might make a good animal trainer. That's better now, let's get a drink, she said. Praise reinforced by treats. She was a natural. We ordered expensive glasses of champagne and charged them to Aaron's tab. Okay, now he's spotted you, Liza said softly. Here he comes. I braced myself, but stayed staring straight ahead. Here you are, Aaron said as he planted a kiss on the back of my neck. I've been calling you. Oh, yeah, I said, as I turned towards him and half-heartedly returned his hug. Hey, Liza, how you doing? He said over my shoulder. I didn't mean to be rude, but I just had to get my hands on my girl. I bet, Liza said curtly. My cell phone rang. So it is working, Aaron said with a quizzical glance. Just turned it on, I replied as I looked down at the number. It was Darlene. Excuse me, I've got to take this. I'll be right back. I ducked out the door to the stairway. I assumed Liza would keep him occupied for a second. Hello, I said into the phone, wishing Darlene and I had agreed on code names earlier. They weren't necessary, they just would have been more fun. Hi, I'm here, Darlene replied. She sounded tired and resigned. Okay, when we hang up, wait 5 minutes and then come up the stairs. When you come out onto the deck, make a left. We'll be right in front of the bar. I'll make sure his back is to you. I returned to Aaron and Liza, who excused herself immediately to go to the ladies' room. Aaron and I were left alone. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "Yes, sorry about that," I smiled at him. "Just a call from a friend." "From that guy Rick, or whatever, your old boyfriend who hits on you every time you go home?" I almost burst out laughing at how jealous Aaron sounded. "No, not from him," I said. "Let's go over here. I want to talk to you." I led him to the bar and angled his back towards the door. "Did you see that guy over Christmas?" Aaron asked. "No, I didn't," I answered honestly. "Did you see anyone I should be jealous of?" I asked. "Of course not, don't be silly," Aaron said very convincingly. "There's only you, babe, you know that. You're the one I'm worried about." "Uh-huh. So, did you miss me?" I asked. I managed to make my voice a little flirtatious. I even rested my hand on his arm. As I smiled disingenuously up at him, I watched Darlene enter and approach us out of the corner of my eye. She was beautiful. The grainy newspaper clippings hadn't done her justice. I couldn't tell whether that made me happy to be in such good company, or even more miserable about the situation. I focused solely on the task at hand. I'd sort out my emotions later. "Are you kidding?" Aaron said, as Darlene came to a stop behind him. "I was going crazy without you. It was terrible. We may even have to skip out of this party early, so I can get you all to myself as soon as possible." As he leaned down to kiss me, I turned my head away. At the same time, Darlene quietly cleared her throat. "What's wrong, baby?" he asked, concerned. I looked him in the eye. "Well, out of respect for Darlene, I'm not sure we should see each other anymore," I said evenly. "Huh? Who's Darlene? What the hell are you talking about?" he replied. I could tell he was rapidly forming a strategy, but it was too late. "I'm Darlene," Darlene said as she stepped up beside us. "Remember me?" Aaron looked stunned. "What are you doing here?" he asked lamely. "Hi, Darlene, I'm Sammy," I said as I stuck out my hand. "It's good to finally meet you. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances." Darlene shook my hand without taking her eyes off Aaron, who looked like he needed some more time to draft his words. "I hate you," Darlene said softly. Aaron looked stung. "Don't say that, baby," he pleaded, before remembering that I was right there. "Is that how you kept from slipping up most of the time? By calling us both baby?" "It's a really clever strategy," I offered. My sarcasm didn't convey the deep hurt I'd felt at hearing him address those words to somebody else, but I pushed that hurt aside. I didn't want to be weak now. Aaron turned towards me. "No, Sammy, wait, listen, I can explain," he tried. "Just give me a minute with Darlene, and then I can explain everything to you," he said sincerely. "No," Darlene and I said simultaneously. "I'm afraid any explaining you attempt will have to be to both of us. But we're interested in what you have to say," I continued, as I moved to stand closer to Darlene. "So go for it." She was considerably shorter and smaller than me, which made me feel a bit towering. Statuesque, maybe. Perhaps. Or lurch-like? I tried not to think about it. She smelled like jasmine, which I only knew because my mom had tried to grow a jasmine trellis 3 years in a row when I was younger. She'd spent hours out in the garden, which I'd resented because they were often hours I had wanted to spend with her doing something that more directly focused on me. Despite her hard work, the jasmine trellises had never fully panned out. But I remembered the smell and appropriately associated it with something that competed for time and attention that I desired and deserved. Aaron looked from one of us to the other. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he finally said. Darlene just stared at him with disbelief in her wide-set green eyes. I think you're right, I responded. I misunderstood you when you claimed you loved me and were dating me exclusively. I didn't realize that you really meant that you were a lying, cheating asshole. Maybe in the future you can avoid this sort of misunderstanding by just going and fucking yourself. Aaron looked injured. He took my hand in a panic movement. Sammy, you have to believe me. Darlene is an old girlfriend. She means nothing to me now, he began. Dropping his voice, he continued, she's a little psycho, okay? She's done this before. Even though he had lowered his voice, Darlene had fully overheard Aaron malign her mental health. You're a liar, she said in a voice suddenly choked up. I never want to see you again. She ran towards the door. Aaron watched her go, with the pained expression of a man forced to make a difficult choice. He turned back towards me. She's not the smartest girl, he confided, and she has this weird thing about me, but I swear there hasn't been anything between us since before I met you. He sounded sincere, but it didn't occur to me to entertain the notion that he might be telling the truth. I also took no satisfaction in the fact that he had chosen me over Darlene in the heat of the confrontation, or that she'd been the recipient of the psychologically unstable charge I had predicted for myself. I could only focus on his appearance post-unmasking. He was no longer handsome and charming to me. I now saw an ugliness that had heretofore been disguised by my projections. It made me want to turn away. I don't believe you, I said calmly to him. I'll never believe you again. Goodbye. Sammy, wait, he protested as he put his hand on my arm. I wish there had been a mirror behind Aaron that would have allowed me to catch a glimpse of the look I lashed at him. I didn't think that it was a look that I'd ever used before, because I had never felt this specialized strain of intense loathing in the past. But judging from his reaction, the look was lethal. He dropped my arm as actual fear intruded into his always supremely confident eyes, and he appeared speechless. This was a similarly unfamiliar state for him. Don't touch me, I said with a sense of finality, and then I left. I felt hot and lightheaded as I made my way to the top of the stairs. Liza was waiting for me there. She took my arm as we descended. He looked devastated as you walked away, she reported. How are you? It was a good question. I felt empowered for sure, and a bit liberated, but I sensed that these could be shell feelings for a deep hurt and confusion that was going sour somewhere inside. I'm okay, I answered optimistically. Liza squeezed my hand as we continued out the door to the street. Darlene was at the corner trying to hail a cab. Her face was shiny with streaked tears. I forgot myself for a moment and just felt sorry for her. Where was she going now? Was she heading back up to New York? Didn't she need someone to talk to immediately? Darlene, I got her attention. This is my friend Liza. Why don't you come with us for a little while? I felt this was an unprecedented and extraordinarily gracious offer. Darlene looked uncertain, then thankful in a traumatized way. She just nodded. Are you hungry? I asked. She nodded again. The three of us waded through the rowdy crowd on the street to a nearby diner. Over coffee and pie, we autopsied our relationships with Aaron. Though Darlene had similarly strong feelings for him, it became clear during the course of our conversation that was pretty much the only thing she and I had in common. It's hard to have a girl power night if you can't relate to the girl. It wasn't that she was a bad person, it was just that she was so unlike me in every way. And this realization led quickly and quietly to a subtle dislike of her as an individual, which was probably inevitable given the circumstances of our interaction. I didn't blame her for everything the way I blamed Aaron, but I didn't feel a tremendous amount of warmth for her either. And as I listened to her bemoan the fact that now she wouldn't have a ring on her finger by her 22nd birthday, as she'd planned in her goals diary, I found myself resisting the urge to stomp Liza's foot under the table. I knew this wasn't necessary. I felt certain Liza was in just as much pain as I was. I really thought he was the one, Darlene concluded after 2 messy hours. I knew the feeling. And I was so looking forward to quitting my job and just making him food and rubbing his feet and loving him, she continued. Okay, I didn't know that feeling. Yet we were definitely different. It's not that I couldn't relate to someone 5 years younger than me. I was ready to adopt Kara into my family immediately. It was just that Darlene and I didn't click. How could Aaron have been with both of us when we were so unlike each other? Maybe that had been the point. I checked my watch. Well, good news is it's literally both a new day and a new year. Soon after, we said our overdue goodbyes, and Darlene made her way to the train station and back up to a new life devoid of Aaron. Back at my place, I made my own adjustments. I threw away some photographs and the Pez dispenser and a green glowing ring he'd won for me at an arcade, and moved my bed across the room to a spot underneath the window, straightening my back in the process. I took some Motrin and hoped that the new perspective would help shake loose the memories of countless nights spent with Aaron beside me. From this fresh perch, I surveyed the year ahead. So, things are going to be different. No more boyfriend, but at least I still had a job to throw myself into with redirected energy. I also had countless maladies to prepare for and defend against, along with scores of self-improvement projects. I typically reserved any resolutions for the Chinese New Year, but I took a moment to remind myself of my blessings. There were men in my life who weren't stupid, cheating rats. RG was a solid family man, as was my father. Anecdotal evidence pointed to at least a few others. Aaron had seduced, betrayed, and deceived me. I had been naive when I met him. I was numb now. I hoped to divine a lesson from this horrendous experience at some point in the future. But at the moment, I was tired. I had compromised myself into exhaustion, and I felt thoroughly, completely drained. I sighed deeply and glanced at the street below me. There wasn't any snow on the ground, but the frosty air glowed in a whitish way. I glommed my mouth up against the window pane and made a face at the night. In the resulting hot breath oval, I used my ring finger to draw a smiley face. My sketch looked sheepish, as if it was aware of its inadequacy. I smiled ruefully at it. So I wasn't somebody's darling after all. That was surmountable. The important thing that I was nobody's Darlene. I laid my head on my pillow and willed myself to sleep, hoping to feel better in the morning.